Good evening, everyone. Time for another silver update. This is a chart of the Chinese currency weekly chart provided by netdata.com. You can click on the link below. And as you can see, the renminbi, or the yuan, had been pegged to the dollar from roughly 1997 through about 2005, middle 2005, when it began to trade in an adjusted band as it began to gain against the dollar. Now, it's pretty much been a steady decline. It was pegged again and then let loose. You can see the only real rally that has occurred in the dollar against the Chinese currency is just right here. You can see now, though, that we're rolling over pretty seriously, and we have a top put in here in the MACD. If we go up to the daily, you can see that we are rolling over right near that trend line, and the MACD has turned down. So we've had a rally in the dollar against the Chinese currency for about 4 months, and it looks like it's going to be reversed. I predict it's going to be reversed in a violent manner. I expect the Chinese currency and the dollar to eventually trade at 1-to-1, and probably 1-to-10 or 1-to-100, who knows. But we'll see why when we look at what's going on there in a little bit. But before we do that, I wanted to take you over to the blog site. Now, this is just a random day that I've chosen on the blog, and it's from the 23rd of July. And if you'll notice here, I have to expand it so you can see it, but if you'll notice here, this is a list of stories that were posted on the blog, and the most popular one was the silver update for that day, so that's not surprising. But the second most popular article was one that was posted back in March. So let's look at the statistics for this story. This is Larry Edelson's The Great Betrayal. And you can see these are the numbers for this story. Ever since it was posted in early March, when it got 250 views, it's consistently gotten 50 or over 100 many days. Today it got 30 views. So it's a very, very popular story. It's by far the most popular story on the blog. And of course, what this story is about the betrayal of the American people by their government and the growth in China. So if you haven't seen it, you want to watch it. I've already put a disclaimer that I don't necessarily endorse Mr. Edelson's investment ideas, but he does a very good job of explaining the incredible growth in China and the decline in the United States. And I'm going to spend the rest of this update dealing with that and detailing that. Now, the story I want to take you to, this is a story that seems to always make the Western press. This is the ghost towns of China, and this is a big deal. Everybody makes a big deal out of it. I'm going to show you it's not really a big deal at all. But this is Ordos City, and this is actually in Inner Mongolia. This is a city that the Chinese built. They say it's a ghost town. Well, it's not a ghost town. It's about 10% inhabited, and we'll show you what's going to be happening there soon. But you can see the amazing architecture, the things the Chinese have built there, and the Western press is trying to convince you that China is going to enter into a collapse, and we'll see why that's just patently absurd. But so that's the story on Ordos. If we go and pull up Ordos on Google Earth, you can see that Ordos is located right here, Ordos City, Inner Mongolia. It's not that far from Beijing, and you can see that it's surrounded by many cities in China, and we're going to look at some of those in a bit here. Now, one of the things that's going to go on in Ordos, which no one really covers, is, and this is one of a few things, this is Miss World is going to be this year in Ordos.
As we reveal the host city of Miss World 2012.
So that's Ordos, and it is going to be hosting many things, but the main point is that it's not China proper, but Inner Mongolia. That's a growth area for China. So they built this city, and they plan on it being inhabited. But I just wanted to take you to some facts about what's going on in China, because you're not going to see them reported in the Western press. Uh, and the facts are just absolutely startling. The Larry Edelson article just covers a few of them. So let's start out with a list of cities in China. Now, this is a list of cities. Many of these you've heard of. Of course, there's Shanghai, Beijing, Hong Kong, Wuhan. I haven't heard of that, but it's 10 million people. Here's Chongqing, or Chungking as it used to be called. This is a city of 28 million people. So let's start out with Chongqing. But before we do that, let's take a look at a list of cities in the United States. This is a list of cities in the United States by population. And you can see here that the top, of course, is going to be New York City. The next is going to be Los Angeles, then Chicago, then Houston, Philadelphia, Phoenix. Now, what's interesting is if you added up the population of the first 15 largest cities in the United States, that does not even equal the population of this one city in China, Chongqing. This is a picture of the skyline in Chongqing. Don't see a lot of ghetto there, do you? Because there isn't any. And these are the other cities. This is the skyline in Shanghai. This is Beijing. This is Hong Kong. This is Tianjin, 13 million people. More than Los Angeles and New York combined. And you can see it goes on and on and on. A little mention for Harbin, that's 11 million, larger than New York. Here's Chengdu, 14 million people. Here's Jinan. Doesn't look very poor, does it? Here's 4 million people. This would be the second largest city in America. And you can see we're still in the millions. So just the wealth of Chongqing alone is probably greater than the wealth of the first 15 cities put together here. Now, these cities as well are hotbeds of crime. You've got Los Angeles, Chicago, Houston, Philadelphia. The inner cities are filled with ghettos. They're decaying. The infrastructure is being destroyed. And it's just on a rapid decline. Of course, as we move further towards a communistic, socialistic system, then obviously the decline will just increase that much more. We've lost the ability to manufacture many things. We've lost our education system to the mind control of the teachers and the dumbed down situation. So really, in my opinion, it's all over but the shouting. But if we go to the Larry Edelson article, I'm going to read a little bit of that because the facts are just absolutely startling. He alleges the Obama administration is conspiring with Chinese leaders to destroy the value of the U.S. dollar. And he gives a big drama here, and then he starts to describe China. Wise men have predicted the developments I'm talking about for centuries. 200 years ago, Napoleon warned, "When China wakes, it will shake the world." Truer words were never spoken. China has awakened, and now it's about to shake the world to its foundations, starting with the United States. This is the Shanghai World Financial Center. It's the tallest skyscraper in China, 101 floors. It took 11 years to complete. It houses the Shanghai Futures Exchange and Stock Exchange. It is also home to China's largest banks, insurance companies, and its financial rating agencies. But this is much more than just an office building. It's also ground zero for the single greatest economic triumph in China's history. But for Americans, it's about to become an icon, the symbol of the most catastrophic event in our nation's financial history, an event that will render everything you think you know about our government, about our economy, and about investing obsolete. I've created this special presentation to give you the uncensored facts, and then he goes on. So we want to read some of these facts, and they are absolutely shocking. The U.S. economy produced goods and services valued at $14 trillion in 2010, but China's domestic product soared to $14.8 trillion. China's economy is already larger than America's. Now, if you look at those cities, you can see that the wealth in China is already literally multiples of the wealth in the United States. The wealth in the United States is really just paper debt. The true wealth is infrastructure and manufacturing, and you can see those pristine cities that they built. Just that one city of 28 million people. And what's worse, the United States is falling farther behind every day. According to the official figures from both Washington and Beijing, the U.S. economy grew about 1.7% in 2011. China's economy grew 9.2%. That's more than 7.5 times faster, fast enough to nearly double the size of China's already massive economy once each decade. And if you get to know a little more about both nations, China's burgeoning economic power becomes even more unsettling, because the fact is Beijing has become so powerful it can now dictate economic policy to the United States. The Beijing government has almost no debt, but Washington has nearly $145 trillion in debt and obligations. China has $3.2 trillion in cash, and its cash reserves are growing ever larger month after month, but Washington has almost no cash on hand and has to borrow nearly half of every dollar it spends, much of it borrowed from China. China's total tax revenues are up nearly 30% from a year ago, but Washington's tax revenues are dramatically down due to the sluggish economy. The United States has about 160 million workers. China has 810 million workers, more than 5 times the United States. 97% of Chinese workers are employed, but 14 million U.S. workers are either unemployed or underemployed. In China's urban areas, wages rose 7.6% in 2011. Meanwhile, inflation-adjusted wages for the U.S. worker dropped 1.7%. The investment facts are even more startling. Securities valued at more than $6 trillion trade on Chinese exchanges every day, and that number is growing by leaps and bounds. China enjoys the largest foreign capital inflows of any nation on earth, surpassing the United States as the world's favorite place to invest. China is now the world's #1 mine operator, its #1 car maker, its #1 manufacturer, and its #1 exporter. You really have to see China to believe what's happening here. I used to think New York and Beverly Hills were the world's pinnacle for high-end shopping, but here in Shanghai, the Nanjing Road shopping district puts them to shame. So does the new Shanghai shopping city here in Pudong Financial District. And these are only 2 of 8 massive world-class state-of-the-art shopping districts in this one city alone. I once believed that Las Vegas topped the world when it came to luxury hotels and entertainment, but even Vegas's biggest and best can't hold a candle to the world's largest hotel and casinos in Macau. I thought that Palm Beach mansions and posh housing communities were ultimate, but they pale in comparison to the massive luxury housing developments in neighborhoods filled with extravagant Western-style mansions here. Any way you look at it, China is already the nation on the way up, while sadly the United States is the nation on the way out. I just read a study by the Program for International Student Assessment that ranked Chinese students #1 in the world. American students were ranked 14th. China's Tianyi-1 supercomputer is the fastest in the world, capable of processing more than 2.5 thousand trillion calculations per second. American technicians don't even know how that kind of speed could be possible. And it goes on, and he documents the startling decline of America and the shocking rise of China. So it's quite clear to me the propaganda by the Western media about these Chinese ghost towns, which is really just China expanding into Mongolia and being so wealthy. You can imagine if you had a person who lived in your neighborhood who owned a ton of land, and they were so wealthy that they could stay in their existing housing and go and build a brand new villa on 100 acres and have it not even be inhabited, but bring it to completion in one fell swoop. That's exactly what China is doing, as it has to expand into Mongolia, because you can see the list of cities that top 10 million in China is very high, and the list that tops 5 million is also very high. So in my opinion, the Chinese wealth is already many, many multiples of United States wealth, and the only reason why that's not being reported, of course, is that the press in America refuses to report any of the facts on this, and the wealth in the United States continues to decline. The cities in America are decaying. The infrastructure is decaying, and to be perfectly frank, if you're a student in debt in America, you probably need to head to Asia, learn some Chinese, how to speak Chinese, or learn how to speak an Asian language, and you probably just want to head over to Asia, because if any of this stuff is correct, America is finished. So if you look at the chart of the Chinese currency versus the dollar, we're heading down again, eventually on our way to 1-to-1, and then way further beyond, because America is doing everything wrong and China is doing everything right. It doesn't look like this thing is going to reverse anytime soon, and stories about ghost cities in China are just a bunch of nonsense Western propaganda press to try to distract you from the fact that the Chinese are already eating your lunch and have surpassed you manyfold, and will continue, as Jimmy Rogers says, will continue to grow for the next century as America continues to decline. And we'll talk to you next time.